In a quiet Brooklyn brownstone, the air smelled of fresh paint and lavender. 9 months pregnant Josephine Peterson was carefully painting a whimsical forest on her baby's nursery wall, her heart full of love. Half a world away in the glittering opulence of Dubai, her millionaire husband Anatole wasn't closing a deal. He was on one knee, holding a diamond the size of a promise he never intended to keep. He was proposing to his mistress. 2 worlds, 1 lie. One woman was preparing for a new life. The other was about to shatter it. This is the story of the moment those 2 worlds collided in the most dramatic way possible. The nursery was Josephine Peterson's sanctuary. It was a room bathed in the soft, forgiving light of a New York afternoon, filtering through the large bay window that overlooked a street lined with proud old oak trees. For the past 3 months, this room had been her project, her passion, her entire world. The scent of non-toxic, whisper-soft grey paint still lingered, a clean, hopeful smell that mingled with the lavender potpourri she'd placed on the windowsill. Josephine, at 34 weeks pregnant, moved with the slow, deliberate grace of someone carrying precious cargo. Her usually slender frame was beautifully rounded, and a stray streak of starlight silver paint adorned her cheek like a tribal marking of impending motherhood. She dipped her finest brush into a small pot of white paint. Her brow furrowed in concentration. She was adding the final delicate vase to the mural that stretched across the main wall. It was a scene of a moonlit forest with gentle-eyed deer, curious foxes, and a wise old owl perched on the branch of a mighty oak. Every animal, every leaf was a prayer for the little boy growing inside her. She hummed a soft, tuneless melody, her free hand resting protectively on the taut globe of her stomach. A sudden strong kick jolted her, and she laughed a pure, happy sound that echoed in the quiet room. "Whoa there, little Leo," she murmured, addressing her bump. "Getting impatient, are we? Just a few more weeks, my love. Just a few more." Her phone buzzed on the nearby changing table, vibrating against a stack of freshly folded muslin cloths. She smiled, seeing the caller ID, Dr. Maya Singh, her best friend since college. "Hey, you," Josephine said, her voice warm. She propped the phone on the table and put it on speaker, not wanting to interrupt her work on the stars. "Don't hey you me." Maya's voice crackled through sharp and loving. "Are you on that ladder again? I swear, Huaze, if you fall—" "I'm not on the ladder," Josephine chuckled, dipping her brush again. "I'm on the floor, painting the constellations. Very grounded, I assure you." "Grounded is good. How are you feeling any more of that Braxton Hicks foolishness?" "A little bit. But mostly he's just playing soccer with my ribs. The usual." She paused, adding a tiny twinkle to a star. "It's almost done, May. The nursery. It's perfect." There was a moment of silence on the other end. "I'm sure it is," Maya said, her tone softening. "Everything you do is perfect. How's Anatole still closing the biggest deal of the century in the desert?" Josephine's smile tightened just a fraction. "Yes, the Dubai deal. You know how it is. He feels terrible about being gone right now, but he said this could set us up for life. He could finally take a step back, be a full-time dad for the first few years." The dream was so vivid, so beautiful she could almost taste it. Anatole free from the crushing pressure of his private equity firm, spending his days with her and Leo in this very brownstone. Picnics in Prospect Park, trips to the Met, a life built not on conference calls and transatlantic flights, but on shared moments. Was all Maya said. Maya, a pragmatic and brilliant ER doctor, had never been fully sold on Anatole Peterson. She found him too smooth, too polished, his charm a little too practiced. She saw the way women looked at him, and the way he sometimes didn't look away fast enough. But she kept these observations to herself for Josephine's sake. "Don't me." Josephine mimicked her tone light. "He's working hard for us, for Leo. He called this morning. He sounded so excited. He promised he'd be on the first flight back the second the papers are signed. And when is that supposed to be? Tomorrow, hopefully, or the day after. The time difference makes it all so confusing." She sighed, putting the brush down and heaving herself to her feet. She waddled over to the window, looking down at the street. "I just miss him. I can't wait to show him the nursery." "He's going to love it, Huasa," Maya said, her voice genuine now. "And I love you. Now please put your feet up and drink some water." "Doctor's orders." "Yes, ma'am," Josephine laughed. They hung up and the quiet settled back into the room, but this time it felt a little heavier. Josephine looked around at her perfect nursery, at the empty rocking chair in the corner at the crib waiting to be filled. The dream of Anatole being a full-time dad felt wonderful, but the reality was this: for the last, most crucial month of her pregnancy, she had been alone. She pushed the thought away, blaming it on hormones. Anatole was a good man. He was her husband, and he loved her. He was doing this for them. She held on to that thought like a prayer, a single white star in a vast, darkening sky. The sky over Dubai was not a soft, forgiving blue. It was a harsh, metallic dome, bleached by a sun that beat down with relentless authority. 7,000 miles away from the quiet Brooklyn nursery, Anatole Peterson adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Tom Ford shirt. He wasn't looking at the sky. He was looking at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse suite at the Burj Al Arab. The man staring back at him was the pinnacle of success. At 38, Anatole had the kind of sharp, handsome features that photographers loved and rivals envied. His dark hair was expertly styled. His jaw was strong, and his eyes, a cool shade of grey, held a calculating intelligence. There was no paint on his cheek. His only scent was the expensive, subtle fragrance of Creed Aventus. He was not preparing for fatherhood. He was preparing for a proposal. "Is the champagne on ice, Monsieur Peterson?" A voice purred from behind him. He turned. Giselle Dubois was a vision in emerald green silk. She was an art consultant he'd met at a gallery opening in Geneva 6 months prior. With her sleek black hair, impossibly high cheekbones, and a Parisian accent that could melt glaciers, she was the stark, thrilling opposite of Josephine. Josephine was comfort. Giselle was conquest. Josephine was home. Giselle was an escape. "Only the best for you, mon amour," Anatole replied, his voice a low, intimate murmur. He crossed the cavernous suite, its white marble floors and gold leaf accents, a monument to excess, and took her in his arms. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and ambition. "And the arrangements? Everything is set for tonight," she asked, her fingers tracing the lapel of his jacket. "The private terrace at Al Mahara. Just us, the fish, and a few thousand stars," he confirmed. "Everything will be perfect." He kissed her, a deep, passionate kiss that was all about the present moment, about blocking out everything else. For the past 6 months, Anatole had lived a meticulously compartmentalized life. There was his New York life with the brownstone, the impending baby, the comfortable, predictable love of his wife. He did love Josephine in his own way. He loved the stability she provided, the image of a wholesome family man, she allowed him to project to the world, which was surprisingly good for business. But it was a life that had started to feel like a beautifully decorated cage. The pregnancy, once a shared joy, had become a ticking clock counting down the end of his freedom. The nursery Josephine was so lovingly creating felt less like a sanctuary and more like a symbol of his gilded prison. Then there was his other life, the life with Giselle. It was a whirlwind of international travel, Michelin-starred restaurants, and high-stakes art auctions. Giselle didn't want a baby. She wanted a partner in crime, a co-conspirator in a life of unapologetic luxury. She challenged him, excited him, and most importantly, she wasn't pregnant. She was his exit strategy. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out. Josephine. Home. A picture of her smiling on their wedding day filled the screen. Guilt, a dull and familiar ache, pricked at him. He let the call go to voicemail. "Everything all right, Sherry?" Giselle asked, her eyes narrowed slightly. "Just work," he lied smoothly, silencing his phone and slipping it back into his pocket. "A junior associate getting panicked about the markets. It can wait." He smiled the charming, disarming smile that had won him multi-million-dollar deals and the trust of a woman who was currently painting stars for their unborn son. "Tonight, nothing in the world matters but you." He believed it, too. He had a gift for believing his own lies. He'd told Josephine this Dubai trip was for the Kareem Consolidated deal, a fiction he'd invented complete with fake prospectuses and a burner phone for conference calls. He'd told Giselle that his divorce from Josephine was a complex but amicable process, a matter of paperwork that was just weeks away from being finalized. He was the master puppeteer, and everyone was dancing on his strings. In his jacket pocket, nestled in a velvet box from Graf, was a 7-carat emerald-cut diamond ring. It was his masterstroke, the move that would finally sever the ties to his old life and launch him into a dazzling new one. He would propose tonight, and tomorrow he would call Josephine and tell her it was over. The timing was brutal, he acknowledged that. But it was better to be cruel and quick a clean break. He would provide for her and the baby, of course. He wasn't a monster. He was just a man who wanted to be happy. As he led Giselle out of the suite towards a night that would change everything, he felt a surge of adrenaline, of pure selfish power. He was Anatole Peterson. He was in control. And he was about to get everything he ever wanted. Back in Brooklyn, the last of the afternoon sun had faded, leaving the nursery in a soft twilight glow. The painted stars on the wall seemed to twinkle with a life of their own. Josephine stood back, her hands on her hips, admiring her work. It was done. It was ready for Leo. A wave of exhaustion washed over her, and she decided to heed Maya's advice. She filled a large glass with water, kicked off her paint-splattered sneakers, and settled into the plush rocking chair. She picked up her phone, a small frown creasing her brow. Anatole hadn't called back. He must be swamped. She dialed his number again. It was just after 8:30 a.m. in Dubai, the start of the business day. Surely he could spare a minute. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, and went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Anatole Peterson. Please leave a message." The generic professional greeting felt oddly cold. She sighed and left a message. "Hey, honey, it's me. Just calling to say hi. The nursery is finished. I can't wait for you to see it. It's magical. I love you. Call me when you get a second." She put the phone down and took a deep breath, trying to quell the small, irrational flicker of anxiety. He was busy. That's all it was. She closed her eyes, rocking gently, and let her mind drift. She thought about Leo, about what he would look like. Would he have her blue eyes, or Anatole's cool grey ones? Would he love to paint, or would he be a whiz with numbers like his father? And then she felt it. It wasn't like the flutters or kicks she was used to. It was a deep, powerful tightening that started in her lower back and wrapped around her abdomen like a thick iron band. It stole her breath, making her gasp. She gripped the arms of the rocking chair, her knuckles turning white. It lasted for nearly a minute, a relentless primal clench, and then just as suddenly as it began, it receded, leaving her trembling and breathless. A Braxton Hicks contraction. It had to be. It was too early. She was only 34 weeks, but 10 minutes later, as she was trying to calm her racing heart, it happened again. Same iron grip, same breath-stealing intensity. This was different. This felt purposeful. Panic, cold and sharp, began to seep into the edges of her calm. Okay. Don't panic. Time them. That's what they tell you to do. She fumbled for her phone, opening the stopwatch app. Her hands were shaking. She needed Anatole. She needed to hear his voice, his calm, confident reassurance that everything was going to be fine. She dialed his number again, her thumb hovering over the call button. She was being silly. It was probably nothing. She didn't want to worry him, to distract him from his big deal. But the fear was a metallic taste in her mouth. She pressed call. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. A knot of pure dread formed in her stomach. Why wasn't he answering? Even in the most intense meetings, he always picked up for her. It was their rule. Especially now. He had promised. The third contraction hit then harder than the last two. A low moan escaped her lips. This was not a drill. This was happening. Forgetting Anatole for a moment, her mind cleared with a singular purpose. She scrolled through her contacts and pressed the one name that meant safety. Maya. It's me, she gasped as the contraction began to subside. I think it's happening. The private terrace at the Almahara restaurant was an exercise in surreal beauty. One wall was a massive aquarium where jewel-toned fish drifted lazily past their scales, catching the soft underwater light. Outside the Dubai skyline glittered like a fallen constellation, a single table draped in white linen and adorned with a single white orchid stood in the center. Anatole felt like a king surveying his domain. The moment was perfect. The setting was perfect. Giselle, seated across from him, looked radiant, her eyes sparkling more brightly than the champagne in her flute. Anatole, she said, her voice a husky whisper. This is beyond anything I could have imagined. Only the best, he said, reaching across the table to take her hand. His own heart was beating a little faster now. This was it, the point of no return. He'd rehearsed the speech in his head. It was a masterpiece of curated sentiment, touching on destiny, on finding a true soulmate, on a future unburdened by the past. He began, his voice smooth and steady, weaving a tale of a man lost who had finally been found. He spoke of her beauty, her intellect, her fire. He conveniently omitted any mention of his wife or unborn child. In this narrative, they were merely footnotes to a past he had already shed. Finally, he pushed his chair back and knelt on the cool marble floor. From his pocket, he produced the velvet box. He opened it. The 7-carat diamond caught the light from the aquarium and exploded into 1,000 tiny rainbows. Giselle's breath hitched. Her perfectly painted lips parted in a silent "Oh." "Giselle Dubois," Anatole said, his grey eyes locked on hers. "You are my future. Everything I have done, every step I have taken has led me here to you. Will you marry me?" A slow, triumphant smile spread across her face. "Yes," she breathed. "Oui, mon amour." "Yes." He slipped the colossal ring onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. He stood, pulling her into his arms for a triumphant kiss as a discreet waiter appeared with another bottle of champagne. They were beautiful, powerful, a tableau of modern romance against a backdrop of impossible wealth. Anatole felt a profound sense of relief, of victory. The final piece of his new life had just clicked into place. They sat back down, Giselle admiring the diamond, twisting her hand back and forth in the light. "I must take a picture," she declared. "The world must know." "Wait," Anatole said, a flicker of caution breaking through his euphoria. "Let's just enjoy this moment, us two. We can announce it tomorrow." He was thinking of Josephine. He needed to control the narrative, to break the news to her himself before she saw it on social media. Giselle pouted. "But I can't wait. I won't tag you, I promise. Just the ring, the view. A little mystery." Before he could protest further, she had her phone out, artfully arranging her hand, the ring, and her champagne flute against the glittering backdrop of the city. Click, click. She typed a quick caption. "The future is ours. Dubai nights." He proposed. Luckiest girl. Anatole sighed but let it go. What were the chances Josephine didn't follow anyone in Giselle's circle? The risk was minimal. He finally pulled out his own phone, intending to silence the work notifications he'd been ignoring, and then he saw it. 5. Missed calls. Josephine. Home. 1. Voicemail. A cold stone dropped into his stomach. 5. That was not normal. He excused himself from the table, walking to the edge of the terrace, his back to Giselle. He pressed the button to play the voicemail. Josephine's voice, usually so calm, was tight with pain and worry. "Hey, honey. It's me. Just calling to say hi. The nursery is finished. I can't wait for you to see it. I love you." There was a pause, and then a sharp intake of breath. "Oh, God! Anatole, call me. I think the baby's coming. Please call me." The city lights blurred. The triumphant music in his head screeched to a halt. The baby. It was too soon. It wasn't supposed to happen now. Not tonight. His hands shook as he dialed her number. It was picked up on the first ring, but it wasn't Josephine's voice. It was Maya's, and it was glacial. "Anatole." "Maya." "What's going on?" "Where's Josephine? I just got her message. Where have you been?" Maya cut in. Her voice sharp as a scalpel. "She's been trying to reach you for over an hour. Her water broke, Anatole. We're in the car on the way to Lenox Hill Hospital right now. She's in labor." The world tilted on its axis. Labor. Water broke. Hospital. The words hammered at him, dismantling his perfect curated evening. "Oh my God!" He breathed the lie already forming on his lips. "The deal. They had us in a secure room, no phones allowed. I just got out. I'm coming. I'll get the first flight back." Behind him, Giselle called out, her voice bubbly with champagne and happiness. "Darling, who is it?" "Come, let's celebrate." Anatole spun around, his eyes wide with panic. He pressed the phone tighter to his ear. hissing, "I have to go. Tell Josephine I love her. I'm on my way." He hung up before Maya could reply. He turned to face his new fiancée, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting disasters. The 7-carat diamond on her finger seemed to mock him, a glittering symbol of a future that had just become infinitely more complicated. His carefully constructed worlds hadn't just collided. They had ruptured. Panic is a poor architect. It builds flimsy structures on foundations of sand, and Anatole Peterson, for the first time in his life, was panicking. He strode back to the table, his face a mask of feigned composure. "I'm so sorry, mon amour," he said, his voice a little too tight. "There's an emergency with the deal, a complication. I have to go back to the hotel and handle it." Giselle's smile faltered. She looked from her ring to his strained face. "An emergency. Tonight, Anatole, we're celebrating." The petulant tone was back. "I know, and I'm so sorry. It's unavoidable. A partner is trying to pull out. It's millions of dollars, Giselle. I have to fix it." The lie tasted like ash in his mouth. He needed to get away from her, to get online, to book a flight. He needed to think. "Fine," she said, withdrawing her hand from his. The magic of the moment was gone, replaced by the cold reality of business. "Fix it, then come back to me." He practically fled the restaurant, leaving his new fiancée alone with her champagne and her diamond. In the back of a taxi, he frantically searched for flights from Dubai to New York. The next direct flight wasn't for 7 hours, then a layover in Frankfurt. He wouldn't land at JFK for at least 22 hours. 22 hours. His son could be born by then. He could be born, and his father would be on the other side of the world, having just proposed to another woman. He booked the ticket, the exorbitant first-class fare, a meaningless number. Then he called the hospital, his voice laced with manufactured panic and authority. "My name is Anatole Peterson. My wife, Josephine Peterson, was just admitted in labor. I need to speak with her." He was put on hold, the tinny hospital music, a soundtrack to his unraveling life. Finally, Maya came back on the line. "She's in too much pain to talk, Anatole. The contractions are coming fast. Where are you? I'm on my way to the airport. My flight leaves in a few hours. There was a security protocol lockdown at the conference center. A bomb threat, they think. We were all held in a bunker, no communication. I swear I just found out." The lie was bigger now, more elaborate. It had to be. There was a long pause on Maya's end. When she spoke, her voice was dangerously quiet. A bomb threat. In Dubai. How dramatic. It was chaos. Anatole pressed on, sensing her skepticism. "Look, just tell her I'm coming. Tell her I love her, and to be strong." "Oh, she's being strong," Maya said, and the line went dead. Anatole leaned his head back against the leather seat, the Dubai cityscape a blur of indifferent light. His alibi felt thin, porous. He knew Maya didn't trust him. She was a doctor. She was trained to see through lies, to look for symptoms. And he was exhibiting all of them. He had to hold it together for just 22 more hours. Then he could be there by Josephine's side, the loving, devoted husband who had moved heaven and earth to get home. He could fix this. He always fixed things. Maya Singh was not just a friend. She was a protector. As she sat in the uncomfortable hospital waiting room chair, listening to the rhythmic beeps from Josephine's room and her friend's pained groans, Anatole's story replayed in her mind. A bomb threat, a communications blackout. It sounded like something from a bad spy movie, not a corporate finance trip. Her instincts honed by years in the ER, where she heard every excuse imaginable, were screaming. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. She took out her phone. Josephine was being brave, but she was scared. She needed her husband, and he was offering up a story that was full of holes. Maya wasn't a private investigator, but she was meticulous. She started with a simple Google search, Dubai news bomb threat. Nothing. Not on the BBC, not on Reuters, not on local Emirati news sites. All the headlines from Dubai were about business tourism and the heat. No lockdowns, no security incidents, no chaos. Lie number 1 exposed. Her fingers flew across the screen. What was the name of the company Anatole worked for? Crestview Equity Partners. She went to their website. Under the News and Events tab, there was no mention of a major summit in Dubai. In fact, their latest press release was about a charity golf tournament they sponsored in Westchester, New York, last weekend. The cold dread in Maya's stomach intensified. If he wasn't there for work, why was he in Dubai? The answer, she suspected, was not something she could find on Google. It required a different kind of search. She thought about Anatole's polished world, art galleries, luxury brands, international travel. Who did he know? Who did he follow? She went to Instagram. Anatole's profile was private, a curated collection of acceptable family and business photos. But you could see who he followed. She started scrolling. It was a long list: business, moguls, financial news outlets, luxury car brands, and then names. She didn't recognize most of them, but she kept scrolling, looking for a needle in a haystack. And then she found it. A public profile. Giselle Dubois. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Maybe Anatole had mentioned her once, an art dealer. The profile picture was of a stunningly chic woman sipping an espresso at a Parisian cafe. Maya's finger hovered over the profile, and then she tapped. The grid was a catalogue of a life lived in the fast lane. Monaco, London, St. Bart's, Milan. Pictures of abstract art, expensive handbags, and 5-star hotel balconies. Maya scrolled back months and months. She saw a picture from 3 months ago captioned, "A perfect weekend in the Alps." Giselle was laughing snow in her hair. The man next to her, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist, was mostly cut out of the frame. But Maya could see the sleeve of his jacket, the distinctive silver watch on his wrist. It was Anatole's watch, a vintage Omega Seamaster. Josephine had bought it for him for their 5th anniversary. Maya felt the air leave her lungs. Her heart pounded against her ribs. It was all there. A shadow life lived in parallel. She kept scrolling, her dread turning to white-hot rage. And then she saw the most recent post, from 2 hours ago. A perfectly manicured hand, a flute of champagne, the glittering Dubai skyline in the background, and on the 4th finger, a diamond ring so large it looked like a weapon. The caption, "The future is ours." #Dubai. Nights. And he proposed. Luckiest girl. Maya felt physically sick. He proposed. Tonight. While his wife was going into premature labor alone, he was on a terrace in Dubai proposing to his mistress. The bomb threat was a lie to cover a romantic dinner. The deal was a sham. Everything was a lie. She looked through the glass window into Josephine's room. Her friend's face was pale, contorted in pain, as another contraction seized her. The nurse was encouraging her to breathe. She was fighting so hard to bring their son into the world, and the man who was supposed to be her rock, her partner, her husband, had just pledged his future to another woman. Maya's first instinct was to storm into the room and tell her everything to shatter the illusion and let her fury fuel her through the birth. But she looked at the fetal heart monitor, at the steady, strong beat of baby Leo's heart. The stress, the shock. It could cause complications. A surge in blood pressure, fetal distress. As a doctor, she knew the risks. She made a decision, a terrible, necessary decision. For now, she would be the rock. She would hold this toxic, devastating truth inside her, a radioactive secret, and protect her friend. She would help Josephine get through this. She would see that Leo arrived safely. The reckoning could wait. But it was coming, and Maya would be the one to deliver the verdict. The hours that followed were a blur of pain exhaustion and fierce determination for Josephine. The world shrank to the size of the delivery room, to the rhythm of the contractions, the calm voice of her nurse, and Maya's steady presence. Maya held her hand, wiped her brow with a cool cloth, and breathed with her through every excruciating wave. She was a constant, solid force in the swirling chaos of childbirth. Josephine, in the haze of labor, asked for Anatole. "Did he call back? Is his flight okay?" Maya's heart broke a little more with each question. "He's on his way." "Jouise," she'd say, her voice even, and calm the lie, a bitter pill she forced herself to swallow. "His flight lands tomorrow afternoon. He's moving mountains to get here. Just focus on you now. Focus on Leo." And Josephine did. She dug deep, finding a well of strength she never knew she possessed. The mural she had painted the forest full of gentle creatures flashed in her mind. She was a mother bear protecting her cub. This was her purpose now. Every ounce of her being was focused on the singular goal of bringing her son safely into the world. Meanwhile, in Dubai, Anatole was living a different kind of hell. After leaving the restaurant, he had raced back to the Burj Al Arab to pack only to find Giselle waiting for him in the suite. Her initial pique had morphed into suspicion. "What is going on, Anatole?" she demanded, crossing her arms. The giant diamond on her finger seemed to accuse him. "You proposed to me, and then you run away because of a work emergency that you can't even explain properly." "Giselle, I told you it's complicated," he said, throwing shirts into his suitcase. "No, I want the truth. Is this about your wife?" Her voice was sharp. She's not well," he stammered, caught off guard. "There was a complication with the pregnancy." Giselle's eyes widened, first in shock, and then in cold, dawning fury. "Complication? The pregnancy, you told me she wasn't due for another 2 months. You told me the divorce was almost final." It will be. This just speeds things up," he said, the words sounding weak, even to his own ears. "Speeds things up." She laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You have a child on the way. A child you failed to mention was coming so soon, and you chose tonight to propose to me. What kind of monster are you?" "I'm not a monster. I love you," he insisted, his voice rising in desperation. "You love the idea of me," she shot back, her Parisian accent laced with venom. "You love the escape. But your life, your real life, is happening somewhere else. And you lied to me about it. You lied about everything." The fight was ugly, a tornado of accusations and recriminations that tore through the opulent suite. His grand romantic gesture now looked like what it was, a desperate selfish act by a man trying to outrun his responsibilities. Giselle, the ambitious art dealer, was no fool. She saw him clearly now, not as a dashing partner, but as a cornered man, a weak man whose lies were collapsing around him. "Get out," she finally said, her voice dripping with contempt. She slipped the 7-carat ring off her finger and threw it on the marble floor. It skittered under a ridiculously expensive chair. "Our deal is off, and you can tell your wife. She can have you." Anatole stared at her, then at the ring glinting in the shadows. He had lost. He had lost Giselle. He was missing the birth of his son, and he was about to walk into a storm of his own making in New York. The control he cherished, the power he wielded, had evaporated into the humid Dubai air. He was no longer the master puppeteer. He was just the fool tangled in his own strings. He left the suite without another word, the weight of his duplicity crushing him. He had a 22-hour flight ahead of him, with nothing but the hum of the engines and the ghosts of his lies for company. At 4:17 a.m. New York time, after 12 grueling hours of labor, the world shifted. With one final heroic push, Josephine brought her son into the world. The room, which had been filled with tension and pained cries, suddenly fell silent, replaced by a new sound, the lusty, indignant wail of a newborn baby. They placed him on her chest, a tiny, wriggling creature, slick and perfect. He had a shock of dark hair, just like Anatole's. But when he blinked open his eyes, they were a deep, soulful blue, just like hers. All the pain, all the fear melted away, replaced by a wave of love so fierce and overwhelming, it was almost dizzying. "Hello, Leo," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "Oh, hello, my beautiful boy." Maya was crying, too, tears of joy and relief, but also of a profound, simmering sadness for the secret she was keeping. She cut the cord, her hands steady, despite the emotional turmoil. She watched Josephine cradle her son, her face transformed by pure, unadulterated love. This was motherhood, this raw, powerful, lion-hearted force. And Josephine had done it alone. The nurses cleaned Leo up and swaddled him in a soft white blanket and a little blue hat. He was small, 6 pounds and 2 ounces, but he was healthy. He was perfect. Once they were settled in the recovery room, the adrenaline began to fade and exhaustion set in. Josephine held Leo mesmerized by the tiny movements of his mouth, the delicate curl of his fingers. "He's really here," she whispered to Maya, who sat in a chair by the bed. "He's really here," Maya confirmed, her voice soft. "And you were incredible, Louise, truly." Have you heard from Anatole?" Josephine asked, her voice small. The joy of the moment was so immense, but there was still a hollow space beside her, a space that her husband was supposed to fill. Maya took a deep breath. The moment of truth was approaching. "His flight lands this afternoon. He knows the baby is here and that you're both okay." "Okay." Josephine nodded, trying to understand. "The bomb threat. It must have been so scary. I can't imagine." Maya couldn't hold it in any longer. The lie was a poison, and it was hurting her to keep it from her friend, who deserved nothing but the truth. But not now. Not when she was this vulnerable, this beautifully broken and remade. "Joyce," Maya began, her voice gentle. "We can talk about all that later. Right now, this time, is for you and Leo. Just you two. Nothing else matters." Josephine looked at her friend, saw the flicker of something in her eyes. Pity, anger, and a tiny seed of unease was planted in her heart. But then Leo made a little snuffling sound, and the world narrowed again to this perfect tiny human in her arms. She would deal with the world later. For now she had her son, a boy named Leo Peterson, a name that for the moment still felt full of promise. Anatole landed at JFK in a state of profound dread. The 22-hour journey had been a purgatory of bad airline coffee and worse self-recrimination. He had turned his phone back on to a single curt text from Maya Leo Peterson. 6 Anselps 220s, 4:17 a.m. Mother and baby are fine. No congratulations. No exclamation points. Just the facts. It felt less like a birth announcement and more like a summons. He'd had hours to craft a new story, a more robust narrative. The bomb threat was too flimsy. He'd pivot. The deal had been a hostile negotiation, a trap. They'd confiscated his phone, held him incommunicado. He was a victim of corporate espionage. It was a better lie, more detailed, harder to disprove. He rehearsed it in the taxi to the hospital, practicing the right notes of exhaustion, frustration, and overwhelming relief to be home. He bought the largest bouquet of white lilies he could find and a ridiculously oversized teddy bear. Armed with these props of paternal love, he walked into Lenox Hill Hospital, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He got Josephine's room number from the front desk and made his way down the quiet antiseptic hallway. He pushed open the door to her room, his practiced apologetic smile already in place. "Honey, I'm here. I'm so sorry, The words died in his throat. The scene before him was not what he had expected. Josephine was sitting up in bed, looking pale but resolute. She was not crying or distraught. Her gaze was unnervingly clear. In her arms, she held a small blanket-wrapped bundle. And standing by the window like a sentinel was Maya. Her arms were crossed, and her expression was one of pure, unadulterated contempt. The air in the room was thick with a silence that was heavier than any argument. This wasn't a homecoming. It was an ambush. "Anatole," Josephine said. Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual warmth. It was the voice of a stranger. "Jouisse. My God." He rushed forward, placing the flowers and the bear on a chair. "I am so sorry. You won't believe what happened. These people were animals, they—" "Stop," she said. It was not a request. It was a command. "Just stop talking." He froze his hand, hovering mid-air a few feet from her bed. He looked at the baby, his son. A surge of genuine emotion, awe, regret, a deep primal connection rose in his chest. "Is that him? Is that Leo?" "Yes," Josephine said, her eyes never leaving his face. "This is your son, the one you missed being born." The accusation was quiet, but it landed with the force of a physical blow. "I tried," he whispered, his own narrative crumbling before he'd even had a chance to perform it. "I tried so hard to get here." "Did you?" Maya spoke for the first time, her voice like chipping ice. "Did you try hard when you were on one knee, proposing to your mistress?" The world stopped. Anatole felt the blood drain from his face. He stared at Maya, then at Josephine, whose expression didn't change. She already knew. The realization hit him with the force of a physical impact. This wasn't a discovery. This was a sentencing. What are you talking about?" He stammered, the last vestiges of his bravado turning to dust. Maya didn't answer. She simply took her phone from her pocket and handed it to Josephine. Josephine didn't look at it. She held it out towards Anatole, her hand steady. No need. I believe you've already seen it. It's a lovely picture. The ring really catches the light. On the screen was Giselle's Instagram post. The ring, the champagne, the Dubai skyline. The caption, "The future is ours." Anatole stared at the image, the digital ghost of his betrayal, and he knew it was over. There were no more lies to tell, no more stories to spin. The intricate web he had woven had been set ablaze, and he was standing in the ashes. "Jouissez," he began, his voice cracking. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" she asked, her voice still terrifyingly calm. "Explain the 6-month affair with Giselle Dubois. The trips to Geneva and the Alps. Should we start there? Or should we jump to last night? Explain how you chose to ask another woman to marry you while I was here alone bringing your son into this world." Each word was a perfectly aimed dart puncturing his ego, his defenses, his very soul. It's not what you think," he pleaded, the pathetic, reflexive denial of a guilty man. "Oh, I think it's exactly what I think," she said, finally looking down at the baby in her arms. She gently stroked Leo's cheek with her finger. "I was in this room in the worst pain of my life, and my only thought was, I wish Anatole were here. I was making excuses for you. A big deal. A bomb threat. I was a fool. I was painting a mural for our son in a home you were planning on leaving." A single tear finally escaped and traced a path down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. "The most incredible thing happened to me last night. I became a mother. And in that moment, something became crystal clear. This little boy." She looked up at him, her blue eyes now blazing with a fire he had never seen before, "deserves better. He deserves a father who is present, a father who is honest, and he deserves a mother who isn't waiting by the phone for a man who is building a life with someone else." "Josephine, please," he begged, taking a step closer. "We can fix this. I'll end it with her. It's over. It was a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. I choose you. I choose our family." "No," she said, shaking her head slowly. "You don't get to choose anymore. You made your choice last night on a terrace in Dubai. My choice is him." She kissed the top of Leo's head. "Now I'm making another choice. I'm choosing me." She looked at him. The man she had loved, the man she had built a life with, and saw only a stranger. A weak, selfish man who had broken something so precious it could never be repaired. "I want you to leave Anatole," she said, her voice final. "Leave the flowers, leave the bear, and leave us." Anatole stood frozen in the sterile hospital room, the world he had so carefully constructed, now a pile of rubble at his feet. He looked at Josephine, her face set like stone, and at the tiny, perfect son in her arms, who felt 1,000,000 miles away. He looked at Maya, whose gaze promised a world of pain if he didn't comply. There was nothing more to say. His lies had run out. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving the scent of lilies and betrayal behind him. The walk down the hospital corridor was the longest of his life. He was a millionaire, a titan of his industry, a man who had everything. And in that moment, he had never been more bankrupt. His future with Giselle was a fantasy that had evaporated. She wouldn't take his calls. The 7-carat diamond was probably already on its way to a pawn shop. His future with Josephine and Leo was a door that had been slammed and bolted shut. Josephine's future, however, was just beginning. In the days that followed, she filed for divorce. Her grief was immense, a deep physical ache for the life she thought she had. But her love for Leo was stronger. It was a fierce, primal force that gave her purpose and strength. She was not just a betrayed wife. She was a mother. She sold the Brooklyn brownstone, the place of her dreams, that now felt haunted by lies. She moved to a smaller, sunnier apartment closer to Maya. She went back to her art, pouring her pain and her hope onto canvases. Her work became bolder, more vibrant. She painted forests, not of gentle creatures, but of resilient ones that survived the harshest storms. Anatole Peterson was left with his wealth, his empty penthouse, and the hollow echo of his choices. He provided for Leo financially, a legal obligation he fulfilled through lawyers. But he was a ghost in his son's life, a name on a birthday card, a stranger in photographs. He had traded a home for a hotel suite, a family for an affair, and a lifetime of love for a single glittering moment of selfish desire. He had flown halfway around the world to secure a new future, only to find he had lost the only one that ever truly mattered. The story of Josephine and Anatole is a brutal reminder that the shiniest things in life are often the most hollow. It's a tale of devastating betrayal, but also one of incredible resilience. It shows us that out of the ashes of a life burned down by lies, a new strength can be forged, especially the fierce protective strength of a mother. Josephine lost a husband, but she found herself. Anatole gained a brief, thrilling escape, but lost everything of value. What would you have done in Josephine's place? Could you forgive a betrayal that deep? This story shows that sometimes the most powerful act of love is choosing to love yourself and your children more than the person who hurt you. If this story of resilience and reckoning moved you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share it with someone who appreciates stories of strength in the face of heartbreak. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. We read every single one. What do you think Anatole's life looks like now?